Debbie from So Easy. Good morning, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to be making these crossover baby bibs. They're made in two layers and they're totally reversible, so you can turn them over and you can either have the same fabrics on the back or different fabrics if you want to. This is my first mock-up and the straps are a little bit short on this one, so I'm going to go through and make another, and I thought I'd go through it with you as I do it at the same time. So if I pop that off to one side, I've started with 4 pieces of fabric. I've decided to match them up like this. So this is the front, main and contrast, the back, main and contrast fabrics, and I need to layer these up because I'm going to cut them all in one go. So if I've got the main one here, that is backed by the contrast there, so I'm going to put those together. And then if this is the main one on the back, that one goes face to face with that one, and that's going to go that way. So I've got in each case 2 fabrics facing up and 2 fabrics facing down, and I'm going to cut them with my template. So I've got my pattern piece there. It doesn't go like this because when the bib is opened, the points go out to the sides like this. So when I put it on my fabric, I'm going to put it so that the point is off to the side over there, and then I'll just use my rotary cutter and cut through all of those pieces at once. So my 4 fabrics are cut and they're faced wrong sides together, both sets, and I've popped some pins just to keep the layers together. And the first thing to do is to trim the top. So this edge just here from the point, and there's a little point on the pattern over here, so I'm going to trim that top edge with some bias tape. So I've lined up the raw edge of my bias tape here with the edge on the top of the bib, and just pop some pins in, and we're going to sew along this first fold and keep that nice and flat as we go, and then we'll come back and do step 2. So I've sewn on the bias tape trim along the top, sewing in this first fold, and now it's time to turn it over to the back. So if I turn over, now on the back you've got this first line of stitches where you've sewn the bias tape from the front, and you want to turn the tape over so that it just covers up this line of stitches, and pin. So I'm going to put my pin as if it were my stitch and put it through the ditch just here, and pin, and it should just catch the back of the bias tape like this, and I'll do that all along. Fold the tape over until it just covers the line of stitches, hold it in place, turn to the front, pop my pin in the ditch where my stitch will go, check the back, and it's just caught the bias tape. So you can continue to do that along and pin where you're going to stitch, and that will help you hopefully catch the bias tape all along. And there are 2 methods to do this. You can then either stitch in the ditch where the lines of pins are, and you'll end up with it nearly invisible from the front, and it will just catch the tape on the back. I've got an example of that on this one that I did just here. My eyesight isn't that great, so I don't always hit the ditch exactly, but by stitching really close in this line here is a nice finish here, and then as you turn to the back, it's caught the bias tape all round and is nice and even. So you can do that one, but if you aren't quite so confident and think that maybe you'll miss the bias tape on the reverse, instead of stitching in the ditch with a regular straight stitch, what you can do is just a small zigzag over the edge, and that gives you much more chance that you're going to catch the tape on the back. So I'll continue to pin, and then actually I'll sew mine with a zigzag so you can see what that looks like. So I've put my bias tape trim along the top, and you can see I've used the zigzag stitch instead of the stitch in the ditch, and it still looks nice and neat. It's not really going to look out of place, so if you don't feel confident, here's the back. You can use the zigzag stitch and it's still going to look really nice, or if you want to, stitch in the ditch and then it's catching the edge on the back just here. So either method will work for this one. So now I'm going to put the trim on my other piece and then we'll come back. So my 2 pieces are now trimmed and ready, and I'm going to layer them up, decide how I want them to sit. I think this is about a nice opening just here. Obviously you can have it a little smaller or a little wider if you want to. I think there looks good. I'm just going to pop some pins in place to hold those layers together. I'm going to put the pins too close to the edge because I don't want them to interfere with the binding that I'm going to be putting on next. So I'm going to put them a little way away. Maybe one here. Okay, so that's now going to hold my two pieces in place, and I've got my next strip of binding. So I have to think about how much I want for the tie here. This one was like my mock-up version. This is really too short. I think I need about 12 inches. So I'm going to leave about a foot. About there. And then I'll open up my binding and I'm just going to pin it in place. So I've just started with a few pins and I'm matching up the raw edge of the binding. I'm going to pin that all the way around the outside and until it comes back out the other end, and then I'll leave some again for a tie at this other side. And then I will stitch in this first fold, starting up at the top here where the binding meets this trim up at the top neckline. I'll start there, just reinforce with a couple of stitches, stitch all the way around, reinforce up at the other end, and then we'll have a look at folding the binding over for the next step. So the bias tape's been sewn on around this point, and I've now turned it to the back, exactly the same as we did the first time, along the trim just here. I've now turned it over to the back, used my pin in the ditch, and made sure that the fold is going to cover up that line of stitching on the reverse, and I've pinned it all the way around the bib. Now when we come to the ties themselves, at the ends just here, if I open this out, as you can see I've folded in the raw edge and pressed it, and just pressed that closed, and this tape will be folded to form the ties. So I've started off just here with a pin, and I'll fold it in half all the way along and just press and pin along. And then what I'll do, start at this one end with a straight stitch, and I will stitch close to this open edge of the tape just here so that I can close this up. And then as I get down to here where the tapes join onto the bib itself, I'll revert back to this zigzag stitch that we did earlier, and I'll do the zigzag stitch all the way around the bib till I get to this other point with the ties. Then I'll revert back to the straight stitch and stitch all the way up to the end on the end of the tie. So let me take this back to the machine and do that, and then we'll take a look at the finished one. And there we go, it's now completed. So everything's sewn along the bias here, which forms the ties. I've done a straight stitch, and then as I reach this point just here, I've switched back to my zigzagged the bias on all the way around, and then switch back here to a straight stitch. So now the little bib's done. I think it looks kind of cute. I've enjoyed making it, and actually it was really quite quick, so I've got lots more to make. I'd better get on. So please pop over to Sew So Easy, see if I've got any other sewing projects there you might be interested in. Thanks for watching.